And now, our featured guest speaker. Some of you may already know something of Debra Peppers. If you live downstate and listen to KJSL in St. Louis, that's 630 on your AM dial, you have probably heard her popular afternoon program, Talk from the Heart. These inspirational show interviews renowned authors, politicians, musicians, and her personal favorites, unsung heroes who have overcome great obstacles, much like Debra has done herself. Or perhaps you read about her personal hero, Miss Alma, in the popular book, Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul. Or listen to Debra's CD, How I Lost 100 Pounds and Gained a New Life. Some of you close to the teaching field may know that our guest is a member of the National Teachers Hall of Fame. It's the only facility of its kind dedicated to recognizing career teachers, to preserving and promoting education, and to serving our country by inspiring others to enter the teaching profession. Dr. Peppers is now among an elite group of just 75 teachers nationwide who have been inducted in this special group since 1989. But she is not here to boast of these accomplishments, although she is very proud of them. What she is here to do is inspire us as school leaders who are in the position of helping children who, like Debra Peppers, started life at the wrong end and could have fallen through the cracks. Let her tell her story in her way. Please welcome Dr. Debra Peppers.
Thank you.
That's what we say, Dr. Peppers.
Isn't it strange that princes and kings and clowns that caper in sawdust rings and common folk like you and me are builders for eternity? For each is given a book of rules, a block of stone, and a bag of tools. And each must build ere time has flown a stumbling block or a stepping stone. I just want to personally thank you all for being the stepping stones that you are. I hope this doesn't come across as patronizing or just, some broad generality, because literally, my husband, who is here with me, and I have been able to travel to all 50 states, over 50 countries, and we have never, and I've never said this, we have never seen a conference more awesome than this one. So you are to be commended. And I asked for a little microphone up here because I know she's going to kill me, but it's too late. Pat Culler, just come here a minute, sweetie. Does this lady absolutely deserve incredible applause? This is for you. Anything you would like to say? Oh, you're even getting whistling here, yeah.
I'd just like to say that the greatest thing that's ever happened to my life, other than my children, was when I became associated with these three organizations, and specifically the Illinois Association of School Boards. They have given me a life, a passion, and a future, because we still have a long way to go. And I thank each and every one of you who have helped make this happen.
Thank you. Now, I did not ask her how many she has done, but a little birdie told me, what, 43? 44! Oh, and where is Randy over here that got in trouble yesterday? No, just kidding. I am so excited to know that each one of you are doing exactly what you're doing, but I don't know if you got to see the Festival of Lights last night, did you? Whoa. My husband and I got to travel over this little bridgeway. Did anybody of you have dinner up there too, where you got to actually sit and watch the lights? See, it was in perfect keeping with your lighting the way, obviously. And I don't know if you get to stay over next week, but do you know what they're having? Auditions for a new program, Survivor. Have you heard about it? Right here, over Lake Michigan. You're laughing, you don't believe me? It's Survivor for educators. I have all of the details right here. And it's going to be absolutely incredible because here's what they're doing. They're not auditioning educators. 6 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are going to be dropped off on a little island right out there at Lake Michigan with 25 children each for 6 weeks. Isn't that great? Now, here are the rules. They'll be given the district curriculum and the discipline plan that they have to follow. Each class will have 2 children with learning disabilities, 2 with ADHD, no Ritalin, 2 special needs children, 3 English as second language, and high school classes will include 1 on juvenile probation, 1 pregnant teen, and a state senator's son. Perfect composite. Now, to accumulate points, here is the deal. No corporate lunches, no business write-offs. They have to survive on the teacher's salary. And here's what they do. Simply what teachers do. They will instill good nutrition habits, teach the gifted, the challenged, the at-risk, all equally. They'll include provision for eye testing, inoculations, first aid procedures, sex education, character education, assist in bladder control, and bilingual development. Then they will maintain ethnic pride, gender equality, maintain discipline, observe for signs of alcohol, drugs, eating disorders, abuse, carrying of weapons, and at the same time raise their little self-esteem. Then they must instill patriotism, bipartisan of course, eliminate bullying, teach them to vote, balance a checkbook, and check for head lice. Then they will work on their own time after school and evenings, writing letters of recommendation. They'll have weekends of grading papers, working toward advanced certification and a master's degree, and attending committee and faculty meetings, and incorporating new technology, and monitoring websites, and communicate regularly with parents. And in addition to that, gang awareness, original curriculum ideas, and teaching study skills for the LD, BD, ADD, ADHD, LMNOP, QRS, TUVD, whatever it takes. Now, at the end of 6 weeks, they will be judged by a panel of parents, the Board of Education, and their 25 students, plus they win bonus points for scoring higher than 8th graders on the NAEP test. The CEO with the highest total wins an all-expense paid trip anywhere in the world for another 6 weeks with their students. Only one requirement: no child left behind. Isn't that amazing? Here was a quote that someone once said. See if you know who it is. I love these little trivia things. It says, "Children today are tyrants. They contradict their parents, they gobble their food, and they tyrannize their teachers." Who said that? Who said that? Socrates. Who back there said that? I heard it. Come here. Come all the way down here. You've got a little plaque. You raised your hand. Come on down. Stand up. By the way, what is going on? Is this Sunday morning? Everybody sitting at the back of the church? Feel free to come on down. How did you know this was Socrates? You wrote a paper about it in college. And this is? Steve Furman, Burden High School. And what is your position?
I'm board president.
Board president, Steve. Woohoo, yeah. Socrates, he'd be proud of him. I really enjoyed researching the 3 groups that have come together. 75 years you have done this. I looked up IASB, IASA, and IASBO, and each one of you, just as we heard from Mark, it all comes back down to what's in it for a child. Not what's in it for me. Obviously, those of you that are on the Board of Education, you didn't do that for the money or the benefits. And one of the things that I really appreciate in your vision statements, many of you in your goals and in your orientation, everything that you said, it comes back down to the child. I know it's so diverse and so unbelievably beyond what it could have ever been imagined. 75 years ago, anybody that was here from the original 75 year? Well, I saw a couple of hands go up. I really want to commend you, and seriously, because your mission statement has to do with that individual child, that's why I want to focus on the child. And I can't see back there But I got to meet some awesome children of board members yesterday. And are any of the families of the Walkers or the Norwoods present today? Does anybody see them back there? Walkers or the Norwoods? I can't see them, but these three children, here were the ones. It was Samantha and Juan and Tyler, and their mom, Pamela Walker, is the board president or board member of District 159, and Sonia Norwood of District 227. And we just sat and talked for about an hour yesterday on the issue of drugs, bullying, teen issues, all of the things that you do on a regular basis, not only in your school districts, but with your own children. And so I got to the issue of the stumbling blocks to the stepping stones, to the overcoming obstacles. My story is Hall of Shame to Hall of Fame. And I asked Juan, who was the 14-year-old boy that was with him, I said, Juan, what's the hardest thing in your life right now? And he just said, I guess it would be my dad. And I said, oh, okay, and not wanting to pry. He said, oh, no, I have a wonderful dad. It's just that he's in Afghanistan for 3 years, but he's coming home for Christmas. See, these are the things when we deal with the children, the individual details that we don't know about. As teachers or principals or administrators in the school districts, we don't know what child has faced a crisis. It just makes us more aware that in every situation we have to be honest. I did teach some drama and English and speech and journalism, and I always invited my students to take off their masks because they taught me to take my mask off. And the front of my book says, use the stumbling blocks of your past as stepping stones, and it has a picture of Teachers Hall of Fame and a 100-pound weight loss. But on the back, I had to be real, because each one of you in your home lives, in your personal lives, in your communities, everything you do, you have the flip side. And I believe that your investment in each child, as there were those that invested in me, make that entire difference. So I list, if you've ever been through issues with negativity, lack of confidence, depression, fear, worry, perfectionism, abuse, eating disorders, health problems, anxiety, suicide attempt, relationship problems, drug and alcohol abuse, no hope for the future. Unfortunately, I have experienced all of these. And fortunately, many of my students, 10,000 through the years, who have experienced some of these issues, knew that they had an advocate. I got to be that one of those 5 that we heard in the opening session. And I would like to personally also thank not only the numerous quotes and things that you have already shared, but I believe that as we were able to hear our president, Norm Wooten from Alaska. Is Norm with us today, by the way, or did he have to leave? Had to get back to Alaska. My husband and I got to fly in a prop plane. It was actually a mail plane to the Arctic Circle from Fairbanks to, where was it? Fort Yukon, that was it, yeah. To an Athabascan Indian tribe, and we got to ride a little school bus with 2 other people to see where the areas of the schools and the towns and everything were. And when we were in this little prop plane flying there, the hitchhiker, the gentleman that had been hitchhiking with the pilot at the mail station, reached around to make the windshield wiper outside in the airplane, because it was raining, make it move. And we're thinking, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Have you ever had that feeling where you just think, I've got to reach outside here and make this? When you are in a situation where you don't know what to do, when you're questioning, why am I doing this? It all still comes back to that child. Here were the 5 key people that made me unable to fall through the cracks as a troubled teenager. I had my parents, grandparents. I had a special teacher, Miss Alma, that Jeff talked about. A superintendent, Mr. Joe Henry, in a little school district back in the 1960s that said, Debbie, I've given you 3 chances and this is going to be your 4th. I don't know if they're going to go for this on the Board of Education. You need to talk to J.D. Williamson. So I had to be reinstated by going to speak to board president J.D. Williamson, and wouldn't you know, his son married my older sister Donna. So I had a little bit of an in, but I also had a little bit of an out with that. When I tell this story, and when I pass this on, especially to young people, but also to those going through issues, I can't help but share the foreword to my book, because it was written by my daddy in 1967. And this was not at a book stage at that time. This was the third time I had run away from home. I was gone for 6 weeks this time. He didn't know I wouldn't be home that night, so he left this letter on my pillow, and I didn't get it, obviously, because I didn't return. As a matter of fact, my parents let my friend Carol and I spend the night in jail in Mexico. Have any of you ever seen the inside of a Mexico jail? Okay, it was Mexico, Missouri. But still, it was still a good distance. Don't discount it. My dad is one of those, like many of you daddies, that would do anything for his children. He tried everything. He had served on the school board. He was very involved in our education, a good, hardworking, middle-class man, along with my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom back in the Beaver Cleaver days, and yet I fell through the cracks. The reason was because I put the pressure on myself. I had an older sister, Donna, who was valedictorian, prom queen, head cheerleader, size 6, everything I wanted to be and couldn't. So I tried to become like Donna, but instead I ended up being the class clown, dabbling with drugs, alcohol, all of the things that kids today tend to do sometimes. And this was the letter that I didn't get for 20 years. My darling baby girl, I write this as you have threatened to run away, and I'm leaving this on your pillow with the hopes that you'll get it before you leave. I know at 17 you're a young woman now, and we can't stop you from going. Your mom and I have asked ourselves 1,000 times where we went wrong, where we failed you. I would give anything if we could go back to the days when you were Daddy's little girl and you'd snuggle up on my lap and bring all of your hurts and wounds to me to make better. I only blame myself for all that has gone wrong, and I'd give my very life for another chance to make it right. I didn't see soon enough how much you were hurting. Mommy and I have prayed and cried for you more than you'll ever know. We have asked if we were too strict, too lenient, too giving, or not giving enough. All we know is that we love you, and we want you to please come talk to us. Won't you reconsider one more time? Can't we work it out? Dearest Debbie girl, we love you with no strings attached. God brought you to us, and no matter what, you'll always be our precious baby girl. When you come home and read this, no matter how late it is, please come talk to us. We love you so much. Always, your loving daddy. My loving daddy is 85 years old, and we have taken them to many wonderful places for their various anniversaries. They've just celebrated their 62nd, and Daddy's going to be celebrating a birthday in February, and he's always wanted to see the Panama Canal, so we're going to take him to the Panama Canal, and I thank God that we were able to see through all of these years the turnaround and, all of the details of how my life unfolded in gratitude to them. Someone asked my daddy when he was riding down one of the rides at Disney World on his 80th birthday, how can you do this? How can you make, what is there in your life story? What has prepared you for this? He said, sir, if I can raise my daughter Debbie through her teen years, I can do anything, anything. So for those of you that have had those prodigal kids, or those of you that were those prodigal kids, any of you troubled teenagers back in your day? Oh, 3 of you. This is Sunday. Liars will be friars. Well, let's fast forward 20 plus years. I had a teacher, Miss Alma, back in the 60s, as you heard, that made the difference. And I also had that superintendent, that board member, and then I went off to the University of Alabama because it was first alphabetically and I only wanted to fill out one form. And that's where I met my husband, Bud Peppers, from Mobile, Alabama. Bud Peppers. Anybody else from Alabama? Oh, a couple of you. Okay, don't get mad, but this is a good Bud joke. What do you get when you have 32 Alabamians all in the same room? Full set of teeth, yeah! A little humor always helps. So we were sitting at the State Teacher of the Year banquet. Here I was now, having gone from poor Debbie, everybody hates me, nobody loves me, I can't ever be anything, Donna gets it all, blah, 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 wah, wah, Charlie Brown intercom, to, I'm going to give my speech. I'm Teacher of the Year. I have arrived. I have come so far. I've lost 100 pounds. I love high school students. I love teaching. So I'm sitting here preparing my speech at this big banquet table at the Rotunda in Jefferson City. School board members, superintendents, fellow teachers, my family, my husband, everybody with us. And across the table, my mom hands me a little box, and it's all wrapped and beautiful. And I thought, she's so proud of me. And so I thought, oh, it's going to be a little pendant that says, wonderful daughter, teacher of the universe, or great humanitarian. And so I opened up the box, and there was cotton, nothing in it. I looked in the lid, and folded, stuck inside the lid of this little box, was a yellowed, crinkled, tear-stained piece of paper that read, my darling baby girl, I write this as you have threatened to run away again, and I'm leaving this on your pillow with the hopes that you'll get it before you leave. I was transported back to that same insecure, teenage, overweight, fearful child. I have mascara dripping down my face. I've got to get up and give my speech, and I'm just crying like a baby. And I looked across at my mother, and I said, how could you do this? And she reached across the table, and she patted my hand, and she said, sweetie, I knew there'd be just the right time. Moms are like that. See, there's this thing that we all have to overcome, and it's one of the hardest obstacles, I believe, whatever your field, whatever your position, because it has the teeter-totter sides. It's Pride. Okay, good. I'm glad somebody agrees with me back there, because I was still a prideful teenager, as teenagers are selfish, even little 2-year-olds. I do it myself. I can do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. I. Where's mine? No, that's mine. That's mine. And then we grow up into teenagers. That's mine. That's mine. And to adults, that's mine. That's mine. And so the I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I don't have all of the things Donna has. It was still all about me. And then somewhere, those key people in my life who helped me to get to that fulcrum where things were steady, and I was able to marry a wonderful man and get my education and finally get to teach when I thought I didn't ever want to spend another day in school. And now I'm on the other end of the teeter-totter. I am wonderful. Blah, blah. See, it all goes back to what we're doing together. And I know you all have seen that wonderful kind of cliche that goes around about the geese all flying in the same direction, and they have 71% more airlift, and everything's better when you fly and one drops out with the other one when they get wounded. And well, my husband taught me another side of that, because down in Mobile, Alabama, and sir, since you're from Alabama, you might know this, they do something down there called crawdadding, or they go crabbing. So my husband is a wonderful fisherman. He wanted to fish. He said, now you can sit over there and crab. And I said, excuse me? He said, all you have to do is you get the rope or the string, and you go down over the pier, and you cast it down, and those dumb crabs will just latch right onto that. You pull them up. He showed me. You get a bucket, flipped it into the bucket, put the lid on it. Caught a crab. Then he said, you try it. So I'm like, okay, I've got hours to kill here. Flip it down, wait for the crab, catches on. He takes off the lid. I flip it in the bucket, and he throws the lid away. I said, what are you doing? He said, you can catch 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 more crabs. Put them in the bucket. You don't need a lid anymore, not after the first one. You know why? They could all crawl out. They could easily get up over the top. One could have by itself. But once you see one coming up, the other one goes, "You ain't getting out of this bucket." And 3 of them, "Not you, not you. If I'm having to stay in this bucket, you're staying in this bucket." One almost makes it over, and they pull each other down. So the question is, do you want to be flying with the geese, honk, honk, good job, Fred, or do you want to be crabbing with the crabs stuck in the buckets? Now, I know who I'm talking to here. I'm talking to the geese. Although my father once said, I didn't have the sense God gave a goose, so I don't know what that means. But I do know that when we do things together, I loved hearing your stories. Here are a couple of the ones that I got to hear. This was amazing. Let's see. I don't know if they're here today, but one from the IASB. Wow, you talk about a story. I was able to find out as I talked with each one of you that the ones that had the different stories also attributed it to those 4 or 5 people that had made the difference in their life. So is Dr. Randy Young here with us? Anybody see Dr. Young? He didn't have to do what he's doing with the IASB. Shiloh Village, he started telling me the story about a book that they had to be censored and some issues with the Board of Education. I mean, here they were building a brand new campus, trying to raise all of the finances to institute a whole new campus, which they have done, but they're bogged down in getting their name and even articles on CNN because of this one book about 2 penguins where the male was sitting on a female penguin's egg. I don't know what the story was, and I don't want to go there, but I do know that we can get those little tiny stumbling blocks when we really have to concentrate on the big stepping stones. So I asked him why he's doing what he's doing. He said, I'm a 5th generation education person. He had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents also involved. And he said, I have triplets who are seniors, and I'm here for as long as they let me stay. He's lighting the way. From the IASA is Superintendent Marilyn Holt here. I can't see you all, so I'm sorry if you are, but from East Richland in Alney, she served on the state board. She also went to be superintendent, and here for the last, 5 or 6 years, she recently they were awarded the Bill Gates grant, and this has catapulted her district in the past decade personally, not only with the issue of the finances and some of the achievements and awards, but her goal is to help other districts find the money that is out there and to learn the issues about the grant writing and all that they're doing. And then I said, on a personal basis, what about your balance that we heard people talking about? And she said, well, I have a daughter that has recently come back home with her children to live with me. So she's lighting the way for them. And from the IASBO is Joe Buchholz here. Joe is an awesome guy. He started as the youngest of 11 children, and he began as a custodian, and he now has his own cleaning and maintenance company. He and his wife have 4 children. They have adopted a minority child and 2 special needs children. He has a 7-year-old, Jared, that he said had open heart surgery, and he flatlined right there in surgery. And he said, but he was given another chance, and he said, that little guy is the apple of my eye, and he's lighting the way for them. See, we have so many issues, so many things in our personal lives, and so many others out there that are nitpicking and pulling, and the crabs in the buckets, and those that are just, but we've got to do this, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do this. And there's a great story that's told that says 6 humans trapped in happenstance, in black and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, so the story's told. Their dying fire in need of logs. The first man held his back, for on the faces round the fire he noticed one was black. The next man looking across the way saw one not from his church, and he couldn't bear to give the fire his precious stick of birch. The third man sat in tattered clothes and gave his coat a hitch. Why should his wood be put to use to warm the idle rich? Then the rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. And the black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his sight. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. And the last man of this forlorn group did not expect to gain, giving only to those who gave to him was how he played life's game. So death was gripped tight in still clasped hands, proof of human sin. They didn't die from the cold without. They died from the cold within. You have to be the catalysts. You have to be those that catapult, that are the vessels that become the conduits to take this light that we're talking about, that you're spreading. But sometimes you have to take it way out here to one little dying coal that's gotten all cast away from the fire, that's just starting to fade out. And that one little one may be a disgruntled parent. It may be a child like a Debbie that has fallen through the cracks. It might be a fellow board member or superintendent, someone that's gotten discouraged. But when you can gather back together and have that teamwork, as I'm preaching to the choir here on a Sunday morning, because that's exactly what you're doing. And I just know that as we talk about lighting the way, that sometimes you forget how grateful people really are because they forget to thank you. As a matter of fact, I made a list of the different things that school board members have allowed me to do through the years. And this is just incredible because you're talking to someone that didn't even want to be in school, much less ever be a part of, a great educational institution. When I graduated from high school, I had 43 in my graduating class. We had to take a school bus 7 miles into the cornfields out past Clarksville, Missouri, which is about an hour south of Hannibal. And so that was the rural area I grew up in. My superintendent, Joe Henry, was a visionary, and the school board members, including my father and grandfather who had served on the board, and J.D. Williamson, to whom I still owe so much thanks. These were people that gave in their little individual small ways right where they were planted, as many of you do in your small districts. Then my first teaching job in 1973, there were 1,200 per grade level at Lindbergh High School in St. Louis, Missouri. So if you can imagine what this little country girl felt like in her first day of class with a class load of 28 per grade, and I was teaching straight English grammar, 6 straight hours. Ew! So I learned a whole lot more than my students did about prepositional phrases, and I remembered Miss Alma being the one that had given me the love of literature, and all of those components started playing together. And as through the years, other people had ideas, and the needs arose. It was a school board member who listened as we read our writing journals at a closed meeting where the teenagers were talking about drugs and alcohol and teen sex and pregnancy. Back in the late 70s when we don't want to talk about those things. Those aren't issues in this district. Yeah, they were. And the school board helped us to develop Choices, which became the program that Bell Telephone ended up purchasing and distributing nationwide, and they hired my students and me to do the little vignettes that the students wrote about their own issues, and it won an Emmy Award in the field of education. Now go figure, it started with one student, Kurt, returning from a drug rehab program, and students writing about things that clicked in my mind, we shouldn't be talking about this. We had an associate superintendent, Elma Armistead at that time, that came in and sat in my classroom and took notes, and a school board member that came in and sat in my classroom and took notes and said, we have to do something. So an intervention counselor was hired for the first time in the 80s. We then went through the court-mandated busing, Judge Hungate, where because Lindbergh, with its 4,000 students in the high school, had 2 black students. Now we were going to be mandated to desegregate. That's what they called it, the desegregation program, and that's about all that it did. Because here were these wonderful inner-city students that had been attending Sumner and Vashon and other schools in the city, were now bussed in, but there were no means in place to integrate. At best, we were desegregating. until you got into programs of sports and drama and music and where the kids learned about each other. So it was a school board member who allowed my drama students and all of our students to make public service announcements that were not only put on NBC local affiliate. We did this for 7 years with Channel 5. And it was a school board member who stuck his neck out to allow us to be able to show that there's no such thing as desegregation. You either integrate or you don't. It was a school board member who allowed me to explore, along with our superintendent and several other teachers, the need for an alternative school. We modeled ours after the alternative school in Peoria, Illinois. It was incredible when we visited that school and we saw these were the kids that would have been cast out, been on juvenile, who knows where they would have been. And instead they were being productive and learning and getting instructional assistance, teachers who cared, and visionaries who said, is it worth all of this for just one child? Yes. It was a school board member and our superintendent and a principal when we first started the inclusion program at Lindbergh. And I was given a 20-year-old girl named Monica that had never been in a public school before. And when Monica came into my classroom and she was drooling and she was inappropriately touching body parts of other children and she couldn't talk, she had the mentality of a 2-year-old and she was just making noises. And when I asked her mother, why would you want Monica to be in this environment? The mom said, Monica may not experience Lindbergh High School, but I want Lindbergh High School to experience Monica. And when we did our final project in this theater survey class, and I had half the football team that needed a fine arts credit, and I had some other little cuties that wanted to be on Broadway in there, so I had a plethora of diversity. Here comes Monica, and I had a student named Tamika that tugged on my shoulder, and she said, Miss Peppers, I have a cousin that's a lot like Monica. I'll be glad to take her under wing for our final project. I said, thank you, Tamika, thank you. And so here's what they did. She said, would it be rude if I have Monica do a cutting with me from The Miracle Worker? Because I'll play Annie Sullivan, the teacher, and Monica can be Helen Keller. And if you notice on her IEP, it says that she has a 30-second delay response, but she is ambulatory. And I said, what'd you say, Tamika? And as I went back and reviewed that as well, here's what Monica was able to do. Tamika worked out that at the end of the scene, this is where Annie Sullivan has been trying to get across to this blind, deaf, mute young girl the issue of water. The final scene is where she's pumping a well, and she takes Helen Keller's hand and pulls it under the water. And she says, she realizes it has a name. And of course, the rest is history. We know what Helen Keller went on to do. But here's what Monica went on to do. She stood here and waited for this 30-second cue of the water being pumped. And here comes Monica, drooling over to the place. I'm standing in the back, making sure that no one back there is going to be laughing or doing anything ridiculous. And when Monica reached down and complied with Tamika, and this final scene had a little canister light that went out, I heard the big guys in the back going. And they stood up, and she took her hand. Tamika bowed and walked off. That was Monica's 30-second cue. Monica was to do the same, and they had practiced it. But she didn't do that. She looked around at everybody that was applauding. And Monica, on that day, smiled and signed friendship. And when I couldn't wait to tell her mother about it, her mother said, Monica doesn't know sign language. She's never done that before. Is it worth it for one child? If you have a Monica, or you were someone that knew a Monica, is it worth it? It was for us that year. We experienced Monica. It was a school board member that allowed us to do this program where we not only did the inclusion, but as we wrote this up and it became kind of a a forerunner for some other issues having to do with the class within a class. There were so many school board members I had to thank through the years. Anita Yeckel went on to serve in our state legislature, and she was the one that nominated me for the Governor's Task Force on Violence, because I was at the time working for Lee Cantor and Associates with assertive discipline and dealing with difficult students and homework without tears and violence prevention. And we started a noontime program. School board members voted in this course proposal that I did that said we really need a student court where the students can not only come in, but some of these guys that have been gang members and some that have been those that have been through the juvenile probation route, they will be the most excellent of the ones who can deal with the other students in these issues. And believe me, they were tougher than any of the trouble they would have gotten into if they had gone to the principals. So I was allowed to institute this new conflict resolution peer mediation group. And it was a superintendent and a school board member that nominated me for the National Teachers Hall of Fame and accompanied us on our trip to Washington, D.C., where we were there with CNN and C-SPAN and Secretary of Education Richard Riley, and we got to go to the White House and all of these big deals. Now, let's go back a minute, back to 1967. Should this person that stands before you in such humble gratitude, and I mean that sincerely, because when I think of the superintendents like Joe Henry and the board members like J.D. Williamson, both who have since passed on, they had no idea what they would be doing in this one little life or the hundreds of other little lives. And Miss Alma Sitton, the teacher that welcomed me back into that classroom, had that little gray bun. This is where the story starts in Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul. And she just said, "Debbie, come here." And I had those big moo-moos on back then, all 250 pounds of me waddling down, and I just wanted to, I'm hearing people say, "Oh, Fatso's back." And I just wanted to hit them. And then I heard somebody say, "No, it's Jailbird now. Didn't you hear she got caught in a jail in Mexico?" And anyway, I'm waddling down to Miss Alma's room. She never shut the door. She was standing there, as she always did for the full 40-plus years that she taught in the classroom. And this particular day, Miss Alma Sitton did something I had never had I seen her do this. First of all, she shut the door. And secondly, she didn't do what she had done every other time when I had come back from being in trouble or running away. You see, she had a trough of papers behind her desk. Every assignment you had ever missed from the beginning of first grade, it seemed like. She not only had all of the lesson plans. Over here, she had the table laid out with how many days you had to make it up, and she would ka-chink, 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 staple them together, and here you go. You have 4 weeks to do this, and I'm here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm here before school. I knew the routine, and it was like wah, 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 Charlie Brown's intercom, and you know how kids are today. I would have back then said, "Miss Alma, whatever." But I didn't. I sat here dutifully waiting for her to go to the reams of paper, and I went over by the stapler, and I'm waiting for the routine, and she didn't do that. Miss Alma, on that day, back in those 60s, opened her arms. She walked straight over to me. And she put her arms around me, and she squeezed, and she whispered in my ear, and she said, "Debbie, God's going to do something great with your life if you'll let him, and I'm here for you too." A teacher. And she stepped back, and she patted me on the shoulders, and she said, "Now we've been studying dangling prepositions, gerunds, prepositions, adjectives, nouns." And she put the packet together, but let me tell you why it made a difference that day. Miss Alma raised the bar. She didn't say, "Oh, poor Debbie, who's got an older sister, Jonna, who's prom queen, head junior, blah, blah, blah." She didn't say, "Poor Debbie, I know you have overweight problems, and I know you've been drinking, and I know you've had trouble." She didn't say any of that. She said, "Debbie, God's going to do something great with your life. I'm here for you. Now you watch what can happen, and I know you can do it. And I believe she gave me extra assignments that day, because here's what the kids are really saying. They're saying, I'd rather see your lesson than hear it any day. I'd rather you should walk with me than merely point the way. For my eye is a better learner, much more willing than my ear. Your words can be confusing, but your example's always clear. For the best of parents, teachers, kings, are those who live their creed, and to see good put into action, that's what I really need. I can learn what all I should be if you show me how it's done, and I can follow every move you make, but your words too fast may run. And those lectures you deliver may be very wise and true, but I'm more apt to learn my lesson by observing what you do. For I may misunderstand you in that great advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding when I see the way you live. Yeah, that's good. From those that I have met this weekend, from what I have seen, you are living your creed. You're not just talking about it. You are building. You are doing all of those block building exercises. You are spending those late hour nights. You're doing everything that you're talking about, plus some. And when you fail, and children need to know this too, don't just fall. I know the old cliche is, it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up. But I believe sometimes you can just keep falling forward. And then when you get up, you're a step ahead. And you fail and you fall forward again. And pretty soon you're way over here and you're wondering, how did I get there from what I was? And you realize it's not about you. It's all about the Miss Almas and the Joe Henrys and the J.D. Williamsons. It's all about those that have served, those past presidents, those people 75 years ago that were willing to come together and say something has to be done for that one child that needs that one area here in the state of Illinois. And somebody did it. And it is amazing to me to think that when you talk about lighting the way, I have to read this because I found this and it was so perfect. It just completely fits with what you're doing. And I won't say that some of you are a little old, but I see a few little gray hairs out there. And this I have called lighting the way. An old man traveling a lone road one day came at the evening cold and gray to an unpaved road quite dark and wide, with a distance to go to the other side. The old man crossed in the twilight dim, for the darkened road held no fear for him. But he turned when safely, as he reached the end, and he lit the way backward to the beginning again. Old man, said a fellow traveler near, you're wasting your time lighting the road here. You've crossed the worst part, and with this ending day, you'll never again have to pass this way. You've crossed the rough part, so dark and wide, so why light the way back to the other side? Well, the fellow lifted his gray-covered head, and good fellow, on the path I've come, he said, there followed after me today a youth who now must pass this way. And this road, though not so hard for me, to that innocent youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I light the way for him. That's what you are doing, have been doing, and for the past 75 years, folks have been doing. Somebody's been lighting the way. Each one of you could stand up here and tell your personal stories of a Miss Alma or a Joe Henry, or the children or the parents or the community, the schools you've helped to build, the conflicts you've had to go through, the legal issues, the nightmares, the headaches. These are the top 10 common traits of a good leader. And I think you all fit in these. I'll just do these real quickly, but there's 2 of these that I'd like to really emphasize to you. It says good leaders see other people as real. This is what kids want. They don't want the loser. It's like, get real, get real. They want to know what you say and what you do is real. Number 2, they're good listeners who are safe. Number 3, they see subordinates as real people. Number 4, they have clear, consistent expectations. Number 5, they seek solutions from many sources. 6, they're flexible, willing to change. 7, here's what I want to talk about, good sense of humor. I have seen that more during this conference, and I guess it's because when you do what you do, you have to have a good sense of humor to keep from crying. Number 8, they can motivate those under them well. Number 9, they find the good and praise it. And number 10, both personally and professionally, they live a balanced life. Now, this balance part, Dr. Randy Young, who I got to meet here, who serves on the board at Shiloh, there's a Carl Jung psychology theory that says the human profile is 4-part: physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. And if any one of those 4 parts is out of balance, it's like a table with 4 legs. You're going to fall in some area. So I challenge you to please find that balance in your life if you don't have it. On a joy scale, 3 weeks ago, I was here in Chicago. There was a huge toy convention, and it's on the front of the paper today if you haven't seen it, all of the issues with the Chinese manufacturing. And a friend of ours just happens to be one of those Hong Kong ladies that owns all of this huge manufacturing conglomerate, and she travels around the globe on a daily, literally, basis. And we're sitting here having dinner. It's only 9 o'clock at night, and she is so tired. And although she speaks and can write English, she still talks with this accent. And the more tired she became, I said, Doreen, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your joy level? And she said, well, I purchased that land. What she was talking about is there in Hong Kong in order to see the harbor. She purchased a plot of land that was next to her huge office building, larger than this building. She paid $250 million just for this piece of land, not to build anything on it, but so that they could have a view of the harbor. But she doesn't get to enjoy it. She travels. She never gets to see her children, her grandchildren. She had big bags under her eyes. And right here at that convention in Chicago, she admitted to me, my joy level is, 3. Sometimes 4. No, what's wrong with this picture? If your joy level is not an 8, 9, or 10, most of the time when you don't have major conflicts going on, find that balance. And one of the things they talked about is the issue of the sense of humor. And since I already picked on Alabamians, any Texans out there? Oh, I see a couple. Okay, well, when I spoke down in Dallas, they gave me this darling little book. They had a great sense of humor, too. It was called Don't Squat with Your Spurs On. Think about it. And so I just flipped it open to a middle section, and it says, if your horse dies, get off. How could we apply that to the school board? Let's see. No. We won't go there. This is for you school board members. Not that I am relating you to a donkey. But one day a farmer's donkey fell into a well, and the animal was crying piteously for hours as the farmer tried to figure out what to do. So he decided that since the animal was old and needed to be covered up anyway, it just wasn't worth it to retrieve him. So he invited his neighbors to come over and help him, and they all started grabbing shovels, and they began to shovel the dirt into the well. And this poor old donkey's down there piteously crying out, and then everybody began to calm down. For a few shovel loads later, the farmer looked down into the well, and he was astonished at what he saw. Each shovel of dirt that hit the donkey's back, the donkey was doing something amazing. He was shaking it off and stepping up on it. They couldn't believe it. Each step raised that donkey. The more they shoveled and the more the dirt, he kept shaking it off and stepping up. And, that's kind of what it's like being on a school board member. People keep shoveling dirt onto you, and the more they shovel, just shake it off and keep stepping up. And one of these days, you're going to get out of that pit, and then everybody's going to say, oh, what a wonderful board we have. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, maybe not that, but at least it fit. And this is for our friend Joe Buck that started out as the custodian. You might have heard this one, but it's perfect. Supposedly was in Washington. There was a unique problem with the lipstick. 12-year-old girls in the bathroom at school on the mirror. They were trying on their new shades, and all of the girls were kissing the mirror. So at the end of the day, the poor custodian would come in there and think, these girls can't even see yourself. All is on there is this lipstick. So the principal and the custodian came together, and they came up with a great idea. They called all of those young girls into the bathroom and said, now you see all of these lip prints, and the girls were sitting here going, wasn't me, no, not me, I'm fine, I'm perfect, no, we wouldn't do that. And they're all watching this, and then the custodian solves it all. He has this long-handled squeegee, and he said, girls, I can see him kind of like a Barney Fife. But now, girls, I want you to see what I have to do to clean off these mirrors. And he took the long-handled squeegee, and he dipped it in the toilet, and he scrubbed the mirror, and he dipped it again, and he scrubbed the mirror. And pretty soon, those little girls were wiping off their lipstick, and they never had a problem with that one again. There are educators, and there are educators. I could just go on and on about how much I thank you all and the different stories that I've heard, and some of you have told me of tragedies, of physical problems, issues you've gone through, but you still keep coming back. What are you thinking? And it's for that we are all eternally grateful. So because I have shared so much of my favorite with the literature and all of the things with you, it would be very unbecoming of me if I didn't write you a closing ode, O-W-E-D, to all of you. 75 years ago, when this all began, could they even imagine today technology, legalities, governance, and such? Yet they began lighting the way. Those visionaries back in 1932 might today think society's gone wild, but I'm sure just like you, they'd do it all again just to make a difference in one child. So thank you on behalf of the Debbies you've faced, and perhaps others you had to reinstate, and for parents who forgot to say thank you, and for the countless others for whom you still wait, for the numerous hours of self-sacrifice, each session, each function, each report, for the stress of elections and hiring and firing, and for your own precious family support. In the scope of eternity, what really counts is to hear just that one voice say, well done, good and faithful servant. God bless you for lighting the way. Sincerely, thank you all. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. What an inspirational message.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I am sure that her message will ring true long after this conference has concluded. We have successfully reached the end of the 75th Joint Annual Conference. On behalf of Illinois ASBO, IASA, and IASB, thanks for coming. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.